Hey, Jeff from Knock here. Welcome back to our series on using the Knock MCP server to build your notification features. In this video, I'll show you how you can build reusable partials for your email templates directly from a screenshot and a prompt. Partials in Knock are used by teams to help them map their design systems into Knock in a clean way. This allows less technical users to implement these partials in their own templates. In this video, we'll look at the MCP tools available for partials, then we'll create a partial from a prompt in a screenshot, and then finally we'll use that partial in an email template. This tutorial assumes you've already configured the Knock MCP server, so if you haven't done that, check out part 1 in this series, and with that, let's get started. So before we get too deep, there are two sections of the docs that I wanted to point out to you. The first one is this page on partials, which you can find under platform and the designing workflow section. Now, partials are reusable pieces of content that you can use across your different templates. They have a number of different properties, and inside of the content, you can also use liquid variables. Now, when we use a partial in a template, you can either use it in the code editor and render it with this liquid syntax, or you can enable it as a block so that other users can drag it into a template using the drag and drop interface. The second item that I want to point out to you is the tools reference on partials for the MCP server. So we can see here that we have a couple of different tools available for us. Right now, that's listing partials, getting a particular partial. Then we also have this create or update partial tool. That last one is what we'll be using in the next section to generate a partial from a screenshot and a prompt based on a feature that we need to implement in Collab.io. Okay, so I'm back in the Collab.io development environment, and I've been tasked with implementing a new feature. So as a collaboration application, we're going to introduce the ability to create and assign tasks. And as a part of that feature, we'll want to send out a periodic email reminding the user of any upcoming task that they have assigned to them that are due. We're going to model that email template off of the one that Asana sends that reminds users of upcoming tasks. So I have here a prompt that we're going to turn into a partial. And to do that, we will combine parts of this prompt, the screenshot, with a cursor to make that happen. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this prompt, and we'll then flip over to cursor. And we can go ahead and just paste our prompt in there as well. And we have just a couple of instructions that I'll run through here in just a second. The second piece that we're gonna do is we'll also come in here and let's go ahead and include this screenshot. So we'll go ahead and reveal this in Finder, and then we can drag that screenshot into the cursor window to make sure that that gets uploaded. So we can see our image attached there. Now let's look at this prompt and see what we're asking Cursor and by extension the Knock MCP server to do. So here we want an email that should clearly list out any of the tasks that are due and display the due date using human readable language. Now we're going to name this partial task item, and it should accept a name, date, and a link property that should link the user directly to that task back in the Collab.io dashboard. Now, we're going to provide some additional context to Knock about how we want this partial developed. So we should develop this partial so that it's simple for even non-technical users to use, but its visual styling should reflect the mockup below. So that's why we provide the image. And here are some rules that I want you to follow. So I want the layout of the elements inside of the task item to be respected. So here you can see we've got a couple of different elements inside of this task item. Each item should have a border, but no border radius. So this is a variation that we're taking on this screenshot right here. And then use these URLs for those icons specifically. So this is something that's always a good idea. We can't assume that Cursor or Knock is going to have access to some of these assets. So always specifically telling it where you want to source those is a great idea. And then here's this last one, and this is pretty important. So use CSS styles in convention that are appropriate for responsive email design, since this partial will be used in responsive emails, but don't include any of this CData or XML artifacts that might appear in other responsive email HTML. So now that we've got this, let's go ahead and execute this prompt and see what Cursor and the Knock MCP server are able to produce for us. So the first thing that we should see is that Cursor is going to decide to actually check out the partials that we already have in our account. So it's going to list out that one partial, and then it's going to create a new partial called task item, which is what we asked it to name that partial, that follows email safe CSS practices and matches the mockup. Okay, so now we're going to call this upsert partial tool. You can see that this stuff is right. Now it's probably easier to just let this tool run and then to preview the result in the dashboard. So let's go ahead and run this tool. And once that is created, you can see it's even going to provide us with some liquid there that we can use to render that. So let's hop back into Google Chrome and head down to partials. And there we can see that our task item exists and it hasn't been committed to development yet. All right, and there we're getting a pretty nice preview already. So let's go ahead and preview this here. And then we can go ahead and provide some values for this. Let's do HTTPS, knock.app, and the name, let's say Knock MCP video. All right, we can see that actually looks pretty good. And if we compare that to the screenshot, if we open back up our requirements doc, we can see that that actually looks really, really close to what we want. So I don't really know that we need to make any changes here. And this actually looks good in the default email layout. So what we can do from here is save and commit this partial. So we'll go ahead and click save and commit. And we'll go ahead and say initial commit from Cursor and save and commit that to our development environment. Okay, so now that I have my partial saved and committed to the development environment, let's try testing this in a workflow with an email step. So to do that, I'm going to use Cursor to help me bootstrap some of this. So I'm going to hop back into Cursor, and with a new chat window open, I'm going to generate a new workflow. Can you create me a workflow with the name tasks due soon? And this workflow should have a single email step. It can be blank for right now. Go ahead and execute that prompt. And then first we should go ahead and create that workflow. So let's just double check that, all right, it's got the key right, tasks due soon. And then it's going to list our available email layouts and then add a blank email step to the workflow using our default email layout. All right, all that looks good. So now let's ask Cursor to generate us some test data. Can you output a JSON object with a top level key called tasks? And this tasks key should be an array that contains task items. Each task item should have a name, a date, and a URL field. All right, so let's get some test data. All right, and that looks perfect for our purposes. So let's go ahead and copy this test data, and then let's hop back into the Knock dashboard. So we'll come over to workflows, and then if we refresh, we should see our tasks due soon workflow. And if we click edit steps, we should be able to edit this email step. Okay, great. And we can see that right now this is blank. And so let's go ahead and input our test data. So we'll just go ahead and overwrite this. And then let's work on adding our partial. So let's hop out to the docs for a second, come to designing workflows and partials, and we're going to do this in the code editor. So let's look at how we would do this. So we have a list of tasks and we want to iterate over them. So that's what we're looking at here is partials in a loop. And so let's just copy that code snippet and let's come back in here and let's add an HTML block. And then we can just replace this with this code snippet. And then so we know that our task item is our partial key. And then we want to provide name, which is going to be item.name. Then we're going to do date, which is going to be item.date. And then finally URL, which is going to be item.url. And once we get that in there, and then we'll also actually want to come up here and just make sure we're referencing the right variable. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and close this panel out and see what this looks like. That's actually really, really close to the initial design that we provided to Cursor in that screenshot. Now there may be a few things like the margin between the task items and the formatting of the date that we can improve with Liquid, but overall this is a really good start for just providing a short prompt and a screenshot to Cursor to create this partial. Awesome. Partials allow you to map your design system or component library into Knock in a sustainable way that's accessible to less technical users. In this video, we looked at the MCP tools available for partial development, generated a partial from an image and a short prompt, and then we used that partial in an email template with some custom Liquid logic. We've seen lots of customers use the MCP server to accelerate their adoption of partials specifically, so I'm hopeful that you can do the same. Thanks for watching and knock on.